want to start that debate.
Jason, as you can imagine, we've had many discussions right here, and going back as far as when you were still on the show. So it's been a long time that we started talking realignment, and when those Big Ten rumors started, and we've had a myriad of discussions ever since. And of course, this is the thing that's on the minds of everyone, pretty much across college football, but especially those teams that have either an ability to leave or a potential path, or are in jeopardy of losing their status, like a couple teams on the Pac-12 West Coast. So, Jason, I'm going to let you cut loose on the realignment situation.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this for, I think we've been saying this for over a year. I think it was last summer before the 2022 season, where we were saying, hey, listen, we need to get out of the ACC. I think the writing was on the wall of seeing where the ACC was at this point. And I think it's getting closer. Reportedly it's Biden the 15th. We have to let them know whether we will be leaving for next year. I have said the Big Ten should be where our destination, and it's looking like that. I think that all indications are that Florida State will be heading to the Big Ten. I think if that happens, and once again, we don't want to put the cart before the horse on this one because it still has to officially go through, I think it would be huge for Florida State. I think you're joining a conference with a national recognition. You're talking about a conference that goes from just outside New York City now to LA. You're talking about a conference that goes from the border of Canada, and we would be the southernmost team at this point. Now, obviously, there are a few questions still to be left into play of you brought in Oregon and Washington, so that gives USC and UCLA some people out west. That's a perfect idea on that one. The question I have is, do you join with Clemson or do you join with Miami? If you're just doing it solely on football, right now, if you're saying as we're taping the show now on August 9th, 2023, if you're doing it solely on football, I understand the Clemson idea because Clemson is a bigger football brand right now. Miami has a bigger football tradition, but right now Clemson is a bigger football brand. If you are going with athletics department as a whole, if you are going with the endowment of the institution, if you're going with the academic standing of the institution, which the Big Ten seems to be bigger on, I think there's a legitimate argument that you go with Miami at this point. Now, Miami obviously did not help themselves last year by being a horrific football team going 5-7. My question to you guys, and I'll ask both Chris and George this one, is if your option right now, if you're saying, which school would you go with? If the Big Ten was to give you an option, say we're Florida State, you get to pick who's coming along for the ride. Do you go Clemson or do you go Miami?
If I had to base it off of the entirety of the university, it would be Miami. If I did it based off of football accomplishment and where I think the future of the football program is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, it would be Clemson. But it being the Big Ten or the SEC, I think, well, really the Big Ten. So if the Big Ten looks at the situation, they've already been awarded their AAU membership, which isn't necessary to get in, but it does make you more attractive to the Big Ten. And then them having such a huge medical research deal going. And I don't know, I would pick Miami based off of what their university's accomplishments are. But I would have to lean toward a Clemson if it was about recent and probably near future accomplishments as far as the football program goes. Not probably the answer you were looking for, but I think both have an argument.
Yeah, as far as the Big Ten, I think them getting us would kind of, scratch that itch for getting a team in the Florida market. I know it's not the same as the South Florida market. And like Chris said, football is just such a giant gap. It just seems like Clemson right now would be more, enticing for the Big Ten from their perspective. If I was them, I'd rather have Clemson and Florida State. Now, selfishly, I want to be kind of paired with Miami because I want to make sure that rivalry never goes away and we play them every single year. So selfishly, as a fan, I'd say let them just go ahead and get Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, and Clemson, and just go that way. But I don't know if they're going to grab 4 more or not.
I guess, George, you hit the nail on the head with what I was saying here, and looking at the aspect of, let's just look at the positives of the Big Ten. The Big Ten is you're going from a conference in the ACC that is right now, let's say not this season, let's say next season, you're going to be on an ABC and ESPN contract that's going to be behind the SEC. You're going to be behind the Big 12. I would have said behind the Pac-12, but the Pac-12 is not going to exist probably by this point by next season. But you're basically going to be third on the depth chart of conferences there. And then your other option is what? The CW? Like you're literally going to be following, reruns of the Goldbergs. That's you're going to be following ACC football at that point on the CW. Versus if you're in the Big Ten, you're going to be in national TV on NBC, on CBS, on Fox. That's why right there, Mark. We had Tony was on last summer and he talked about the economics of it. I mean, the economics alone. There's a legitimate argument that could be made that Florida State could have access to research money that could make Florida State eventually one day the flagship university of the state of Florida, just with that research endowment that could come in there on that point. I guess I agree with George on this issue. My concern is if you're saying right now the Big Ten will have 20 teams, let's say 10 and 10, let's say you're doing 10 and 10, you play your 9 teams in your division, and then the argument is they're going to want us to play 2 teams from the other division every year. So that would leave 11 games. Unless the NCAA plans on expanding to a 13-game regular season or something, you would have to make a decision whether you're playing Miami or Florida at this point. And my question, I would say this to you, so I'm going to throw this here because I'm a troublemaker here. Mark knows this one. If you could only play one, Miami or Florida, who do you play?
What? It has to be Florida because of the law.
No, that's actually not true. It is actually not a law in the state of Florida. It was proposed as a law, and I always thought that too, but it is actually not a law in the state of Florida that Florida State have to play.
I thought during COVID, Ron DeSantis threw a fit about. Okay, we'll go with
it's actually not. Yeah.
I mean, the longest rivalry, I guess you'd have to say Florida still. I can't stand Miami out of the two, but I mean, I think you would stick to Florida because it's been so long. I would imagine that's who you'd stick with.
Yeah, that's tough the way you lined out that schedule. It's like really an impossible question to ask. Like, how do you not play Florida ever? And Miami, like you said, we hate them, but I guess that's the easiest way out is to say Florida and just figure out how to get Miami on there as much as possible. But I'd like to think they can figure out that conference schedule.
Right.
If Miami did come with us, they need to just make sure they're in our division, I guess.
There is a way, and obviously working for an NBC station, we have heard some of the things. There is a possibility the Big Ten would, if it's 20, go to 4 teams with 5 in them each. So like we would be in a division with, it would be us, Clemson. Let's say Clemson comes, it would be us, Clemson, Rutgers, Maryland, and Penn State, kind of the Eastern 5 out of the group. And then basically you'd have 5, 5, 5, 5, and then you'd figure out some way where it's like you'd play your 4 teams in the division, and then you'd play 5 teams from another division, and that'd be 1 year. And then you would just rotate, so you play teams every 3 years. That would be a possibility there. But then you come into the question of who would be then what do you just take the 2 teams with the best record, have them play for the title? That wouldn't be the worst possibility in the world. My argument for Miami would be more, and I've lived all over the state of Florida, so I've seen it both. There's more Florida fans in the Orlando area, the Tampa area, the Jacksonville area, in areas where there's also a lot of Florida State fans. I feel like Miami is more valuable to us because of our tradition of recruiting this area. We've taken guys like Dalvin Cook, like Devontae Freeman, Kelvin Benjamin being from Palm Beach County, Jordan Travis being from Palm Beach County, Marvin Jones, arguably one of the best linebackers in our school's history. So to me, I feel like Miami is more valuable, and I feel like if you don't play Miami every year, you lose a little bit of that presence. You're going to have that presence in Orlando and Tampa and Jacksonville just by being more in the northern part of the state. But I just feel like you need that Miami presence.
It's a hell of a game, no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Your second scheduling model and division format with the pod system, that's the one that works. The 9 division or the 10-team divisions, it's not functional.
The other option is they've talked to them, and I guess the NCAA doesn't want, because the other option is you have 2 divisions and you kind of play a semifinal game and then a championship game. But the problem there is you're expanding. By that point, you're at a 14-game regular season. If your team makes the playoff, you're in the semifinal of the playoff, then your title game. All of a sudden, you're playing an NFL schedule.
Yeah, in a sport where the talk is about player safety and also players opting out of postseason games, I cannot imagine that the schedule is going to be expanded. We're going to have we're going to have players sitting out of playoff games because if they're going to have to play extra games and then they're going to arrive at the playoffs and they're going to be presented with having to win 3 or 4 games to get to winning a national championship, I wouldn't be surprised if we get to that point. So I don't see in any way how anything's being added to the regular season in college football. If anything, I would think it would be reduced. Obviously, those are money considerations, so that may not happen either.
And I think we'd be in the easiest division out of the group because basically what it would come down to, and all this is obviously unofficial, but it would be us, Clemson, Rutgers, Maryland, and Penn State in our division. The other division would be, it'd be Indiana, Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. So that you'll let those guys beat each other up a little bit. Then you would have it'd be Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Northwestern, Illinois, and then it would be USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, and Nebraska. So Nebraska would have to constantly travel out west for at least a couple of their division games, at least 2 of their division games. So they'd whine and complain about that one, but if they don't like it, go back to the Big 12 or go to the Mountain West.
You could play 5 divisions of 4 teams, and you keep a Western division with everybody on the West Coast.
But you'd have to have a 5, so you'd have to. Nebraska's obviously the furthest west, so unfortunately they'd have to.
No, you have 5 divisions of 4 teams. And then you keep everybody out west. There's a number of ways to do it.
It's a possibility, yeah. I like mine, though. Most of it's mine. That's why I like it.
With all this realignment, I spend half my time working out division lineups and scheduling and everything. People enjoy that, so we crank out those videos all the time. So, yes, we have sliced and diced the Big Ten every which way, from 16 to 18 to 20 to 21. If Notre Dame jumps on board, then you got 3 7-team divisions.
There you go. 3 7-team divisions. I like that.
But I'll ask both George and Chris before I go. Big Ten or SEC? Which one do you guys want? Be honest. There's no wrong answer here.
Oh, you got to worry about me being. It's been Big Ten. I've been talking about it for over a year.
Yeah, same. We've talked about it at length. There's just so many reasons. ACC, SEC being tied together with ESPN. Big Ten's pretty much got, like you said, NBC, Fox. They've got the best position to put us, to take advantage of the leverage we provide. SEC's already got Florida. Like we're going to play all these Southern teams. We're in the South. It's just the opportunity to play Michigan, USC, Ohio State, all those teams. I mean, you can't beat it. And the money is going to be the same pretty much.
Mark, you want us to come to the Big Ten?
On to the Big Ten. Yes, that is good for the Big Ten. As I have stated many times, the Big Ten checks every box except recruiting footprint. And they need more football players within the footprint. And where do you go for football players? You go to Florida. So when you can speak,
don't send them down here for our players.
Well, Ohio State's already coming down for players. So
Ohio
there'll just be more Big Ten teams coming down for players.
Ohio State lives here in Broward County, so they unfortunately know their way down here to South Florida. So
I'll definitely take some of those O-linemen from up there, though, for sure.
That's the trade-off. But I think Florida State in the Big Ten would be phenomenal, but they need a running mate. So whether that's Clemson or Miami, I tend to think overall it should be Miami more so than Clemson. But either way.
Mark, did you enjoy this taste? I mean, I gotta get back to work, but did you enjoy this little taste of a reunion here?
Absolutely. The only thing we need is a hot take, but you'll have to save that up for next time.
I promise you, I will come back before the regular season. And I will give you a hot take.
Okay.
It's not just going to be a hot take. It's going to set your channel on fire.
I'm a tough grader because I've rated many of your hot takes lukewarm.
Sizzling.
Okay. All right.
Like the fajitas at Chili's. Sizzling.
Okay. Just don't get me into a wager on any of these hot takes. You know how that results.
George, Chris, good to meet you guys. Mark, we'll see you later.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you being here.